Okay, we're in the middle of the fifth section in the first chapter. I'll start at the beginning of that particular piece again. We're talking about this basic theology. How do we think about the Kodesh Baruch Hu, given that his real existence is impossible to know? How then do we think about him? And one of the things we said was that he possesses every category of perfection. Now, the Ramchal elaborates here. Most of what he's saying is taken from the Rambam in this case. You have to know, his existence, his name should be blessed, Mitzius Pshuta, it is absolutely simple. Bli Harkava v'ribui klal. Harkava means composition. It's composed out of other elements. That's not true for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there's no multiplicity, which is another feature. Whatever you say about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, no number greater than one should ever be used. Now, I don't know if I have told you because you're new students, but my training is in mathematical logic. And one of the things we are trained to do is to speak very precisely. I choose my words, and I mean only the words that I say, and not any paraphrase of the words that I say. If my words are wrong, then I'm wrong. But if it's the words are changed, it's not so. I said no number other than one should ever be used. That does not imply that one should be used. I didn't say that. I just said no number other than one should be used. That leaves one up in the air. That could be subject to further consideration. And the Rambam actually says you can't say one either. And you can't say that God exists either. So, but here he says there's no ribui. So all he's saying, Ramchal is saying here is no number other than one should be used. And that's why I'm putting it that way. He's making a negative statement, and it's easier to explain than what I said in the name of the Rabbi. So now, how do we do this? He has every different category of perfection. There are lots of categories of perfection. He has all of them, and yet he's not composed of different elements, and has no multiplicity. Yeah, they're all there, but they're there in a way which is absolutely simple. Now he says Perush. And the word Perush, like the word Kolomar, when you see it, means we're in trouble. And I'm going to explain it to you. You can't stop here and you can't take it simply, because without what I'm going to explain to you now, you won't get the right impression. Always, when you see Kolomar, which is a very common word in commentaries, you have to think to yourself, what's wrong? Well, why is he worried? What's bothering him? That he has to give an explanation and he doesn't want you to take it neat and simply. Kihine, now as we said yesterday, Benefesh yimtzu kochos rabim shonim. In the soul of a human being, there are many different capacities, and they're different from one another, and they're different in the following sense, that each one of them has its own definition. The definition describes its essence, and by the definition of each one, you can see how they're different from one another. For example, memory has one definition. Will, the power to decide, has another definition. And dimyon, which I said was conceptualization or classification, is another power. And not one of these infringes on the definition of another one. The area called memory and the area called will have no overlap. Memory is one thing and willing is something else, and neither one has nothing in common with the other. Because the definition of will is one definition, and the definition of memory, the definition of will is another definition. And will does not go into appear within the definition of memory, and memory doesn't appear inside the definition of will. And same with all of them. All of them have definitions which stake out completely disparate, independent, non-overlapping territory. Now, we're also going to say that he has all these abilities. So how do we get around the problem that when we say that he has all these abilities, we are attributing ribu, we're attributing multiplicity? He says, however, the master, blessed be he, is not possess. He does not possess different abilities, even though he has within him items which in us are different abilities, because he wills, and he's wise, and he has power, and he has each of the perfections, and all of those are different in us, but the essence of God's existence is such that all of these different powers are included in the essence of his existence, and his definition includes all perfection as one thing. Not as many things, but as one thing. The result is that he has all perfection, not like something added on to his essence and the nature of his existence. No, he has it due to his own nature, his own inherent nature, which includes within its essence all perfection. It's something which cannot fail to possess all of the perfections because of its own character. So there's a lot of words here, and it's a very complicated concept. I can explain it part of the way. I can't do it full justice, but I can explain it part of the way. One of the ways that you know in a human being, let's say, that memory on the one hand and will on the other hand, and memory, will, and what's the third one that he used here? Come on. Oh yes, and categorization, classification, conceptualization is because they can vary independently. A person's memory, first of all, when you're young, is expanding all the time. You're learning rafts and rafts of material. And then you lose things, you forget things. So your memory is expanding and contracting, and that had nothing to do with your ability to make decisions. Your ability to make decisions may not change at all. Or maybe it's getting steadily stronger and stronger. So if character A is going up and down, and character B is getting steadily stronger, they're different characters. They're different because they develop differently. Not one implies the other. The person has amnesia, loses a lot, doesn't lose whole memory. By the way, I don't know, people don't understand this. The person who has amnesia does remember how to make a phone call. He does remember how to ride a bicycle. He loses memory of his personal history. Even total amnesia doesn't mean the person doesn't know how to use a knife and fork. But that's a gigantic loss to his memory. It may have nothing to do with his conceptualization and nothing to do with his willpower. So the fact that they vary separately in people, and by the way, they develop separately. You know, some different children, the different ones develop at different speeds. A 6-year-old can speak very convincing English. Speaking English is an extraordinarily difficult task. Ask Google Translate, which is full of mistakes. But his memory is certainly not very well developed. His willpower is almost zero, a 6-year-old. So they develop very differently for one another, and that's why we identify them as different powers in a human being. With respect to Kodesh Baruch Hu, number one, every one of them is absolute, constant, unchanging, and necessary. God can't lack his wisdom, can't lack his will, can't lack his memory. They are essential to his being. The very nature of God is such that Deny any one of them, and you've changed your subject. You're not speaking about the same being whatsoever. And they are absolutely constant. So there's the kind of pressure you have in a human being to distinguish them as separate powers, a great deal of that pressure is taken off when you apply it to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Now, I think his words hint at something else. This is in the Rambam, and I told you he quotes the Rambam very often. The Rambam says the following. You probably have heard of the problem of foreknowledge and free will. If God knows the future, how can we have free will? The Mishnah registers the problem. It's a sophisticated problem. We have many sources that discuss it. Only recently, a couple of years ago, I came across the tshuva of the Rivash, where he's a much better philosopher than I am. I had 4 categories. He said there are only 2, and he made some arguments against others, and I changed my whole position about it. But the Rambam's approach to the problem, what I'm going to say now is controversial. The only thing I can say from my opinion is that it's right. The Rambam's approach to the problem is that we don't say that God knows, because we don't say anything about God. We don't give any positive descriptions to God whatsoever. And if you have a problem that you're facing a contradiction between A and B, and somebody says, "Oh, I don't believe in A, give it up," so then the problem goes away if it was a contradiction between A and B. Now, of course, if I resolve not to say, again, what I said at the beginning of this year, right? I'm not saying. If I resolve not to say that he knows, that doesn't mean I'm committed to his being ignorant. I can choose not to say that he knows and not to say that he's ignorant, on the grounds that I don't describe him at all, beyond all human description altogether. I'm just going to do something very un-Jewish. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm not going to talk about God at all. Talk about what he does, but not what he is. So the Rambam says that as the solution in the Mishnah Torah. And if somebody doubts that that is what he's saying in the Mishnah Torah, I will point out that in the Guide of the Perplexed, part 3, chapter 17, he's discussing a certain school of Arabic philosophy. And he says, and by the way, they believe that God knows everything, including the future, and they believe in free will, and a little thought will reveal to you that that's a contradiction that can't be resolved. So if somebody thinks in the Mishnah Torah that he solved the problem, it's just not true. He knows very well it doesn't have a solution. But his approach is to give up saying God knows on the general grounds that we don't say anything about God. Now, in that discussion, he uses the following phrase. We can't know how God knows what he knows. Now, that phrase caused me problems because that sounds like he really does know, we just can't say how. And I just told you we don't say that he knows. My oldest son, from whom I've taken a great deal, said what he means is this. He has all the powers of knowledge, but what gives him the power of knowledge isn't what we call knowledge. That's not where it comes from. It comes from something else. That fits the words that the Ramchal says here towards the end. After all, we say he has these perfections because he does these things. He wills. We don't say he has will, we say he wills, is what he does. So what the Rambam is saying is that he could do everything that knowledge enables people who have knowledge to do, but he doesn't using knowledge. I'll give you a rough analogy to what I mean. So maybe it'll give this image will give you something to relate to sort of intuitively. Imagine going back in time 200 years with an MP3 music memory plus some small speakers. And you're talking to the people and interacting with them and so on and so on. And then you say to them, I want to show you something. You take it out and you play a recording of violin music. They stand there, stupefied, astonished, and then they say, how did you get a human being and a violin into that little box? How did you do that? She said, listen, let me tell you, there's no person with a violin in the box. Oh, you can't fool us. We know what that sounds like. We know very well. That's a person playing a violin. We just want to know how you got him into the box, this little box. So, well, and they won't believe you because they know what that is. They know it's violin music. So at a certain point, you say to them, listen, there's no man in the box. You can break it open, you'll find there's no man in the box. You couldn't possibly understand what's going on in there. This thing makes violin music without there being a person and a violin in the box. And if you tell me that really there was a person and a violin someplace else and they recorded it, let's say it was made by a synthesizer, even though they're not very good with violin, but let's say it made it with a synthesizer. So there was no violin and there was no person. So they recognize the experience, but they have no clue as to what's causing the experience. No clue. It would take you 2 years to bring their education up to the level where they can understand about solid circuits and laser beams and chips and so forth and so on. So we're a little bit in that position. Because Baruch Hu does various things. We know how we do them. We know what the kochos of the nefesh are, the powers of the soul are that enable us to do these things. And we're being told, you see that he does them. That's not how he does them. He does them in a different way. And now we're being told in positive terms that there's something about the nature of his existence, which we can't understand in general, and that makes it possible for all of the behaviors of the virtues to come out of one single source. It would be a little bit, again, I'll give another analogy. Telling somebody 200 years ago, everything you see around you, I'm oversimplifying, but everything you see around you is made out of 3 building blocks, and only 3 building blocks. Let's say protons, neutrons, and electrons, when there once upon a time thought that that's all there was. There are hundreds of different materials. Some of them are alive, and some of them are dead. Some expand, some melt, some are dissolved by acid, some explode. They're all made of just 3 building blocks? 3 little pebbles? It's not possible. Not conceivable. Now, chemistry tells you that it's so. Right? They're all made of atoms, and the atoms are basically made, I'm talking about gluons and pions and muons and so forth and so on. I know about those. But it's made of 3 little building blocks? Yeah, that's right. These things are such that when you put them together in different combinations, you get very, very, very different results. Surprise, surprise. It is a surprise. So that's something like what we're being told here. That which in us are definitely different abilities, because the definition is different, because they are independent of one another in the way they operate and the way they vary, the way they grow and decrease. Because Baruch Hu has all those powers, but they come from a root which is utterly different from our powers, and in him that root is absolutely singular, even though it enables many different powers to come out. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. So like in a sense, like you're saying, like as human beings, everything is like we have to take it from an outside source. When Kadosh Baruch Hu, it's all within him. It's all one source. It's not coming from an outside source. He doesn't need to learn anything. It's already in his essence. When us, we have to go out of our way to gain this knowledge. And for him, knowledge is knowledge. It's his.
That's true. That's true. And I said that something like that at the beginning, but that's, I think, the minor point of part of what I'm trying to say. That was addressed to the question, how do you know that in us there's separate powers? One of the ways you know that there's separate powers in us is because they function separately. Mm-hmm. One of the ways they function separately is that they grow or they can decrease, and one can grow and the other can be decreasing, and the third one can be constant. And since they develop and they operate in different ways, they have to be characterized as different powers. Right? And since that doesn't apply to Kodesh Baruch Hu, that pressure for saying they're different doesn't exist. Now, that doesn't settle it, that's just one pressure. Right? Then the other consideration that the Ramchal raised was their definition. Their definitions are different. Even if we were born with them, and even if they were constant, still will and conceptualization and memory are different abilities, because the definitions are different. We know from our own experience that we have these capabilities as powers, and we use them. We can use them consciously. We can develop them consciously. So we know them as separate powers that our souls have. That's the way he puts it. That's the way the Jewish view is that they're powers of the soul, but they're separate powers in the soul. And we're saying that's true for a human being. That even that's not true for Kodesh Baruch Hu. For him, they're not separate powers. They're features that come out of a single essence, and they come necessarily out of a single essence.
So is my memory from the time
I'm born to the time I pass away. Is that part of God's memory as a constant? So, that 0 or greater than 1. His 1 is knowing everything as a constant through infinite time as unchanging, whereas for me, as I experience it in time, it's changing.
I think that's true. I think what you say about God is certainly true. Our picture is that He's all-knowing and always all-knowing. So, and He doesn't change. That's another principle of God. God doesn't change.
He knows your memory, not only now, but through the next 50 years. He's going to know that memory. That's already part of God.
Yeah, but going to know is not quite right. It's already part of God. That's right.
Part of God,
That's right. That's right.
Okay. And the same thing would be will. In other words, He knows all. His will is all wills from the beginning of existence, or whatever it is, from the beginning to end. The will is His will. It's a one will. We're only like a tiny part of, an infinitesimally small part of that will.
I wouldn't say that. I don't think that follows. I don't think that follows. The knowledge is constant and all-encompassing. That's what it means to be omniscient. But to say that my will is part of it, what part of would mean here? We're not talking about a pie that has slices. The way that His will relates to everything else is that His will gives everything else existence. He gives it its existence. That's why He's called the Creator. His existence is necessary. We read that yesterday. But I didn't say, but I should say it now. He has necessary existence, and He's the only thing that has necessary existence, on our view. Which means that everything else is created by Him. That's why we call Him the Creator, with a capital C. Because that's what He is. He gives existence to everything else. The Ramchal actually said it at the beginning, right? Hu himtzi umamtzi. He brought into existence everything else, and He continues to support the existence of everything else. Now, He didn't have to do that. Nothing forced Him to do that. So our existence is contingent. It might have been, it might not have been. His existence is necessary. He's the only thing with necessary existence. So the relationship between His will and everything else is that His will gives everything else its existence. But that doesn't mean that everything else is in Him, part of Him, comprised by Him, and so forth and so on. That doesn't follow. That doesn't follow. God is not a table, and a table is not God. Not even part of God. No part of God is physical. God is not partly physical, on our view.
Do you think you can relate the Tehillim? I think it's like life results from His favor or something, like, to what you're saying.
Say it again. Which one?
There's a Tehillim, I think it's like chapter 30 something.
Yeah.
I think it goes like life results from His favor. Is that like what you're trying to say? Like His existence is like absolute and we need it? Like His...
That's right. We say after Baruch Hu in the morning, Mechadesh Tamed Ma'aseh Bereishis. God makes anew the work of creation continuously. That means without His making it, it wouldn't be here. That's the Ramchal's mamtzi, the present tense. He makes it exist.
He makes it exist. Yeah.
He gives it its existence.
Yeah.
So the fact that a book sits here, or the Earth turns on its orbit, or light travels at the speed of light, all of that is because God's giving it its existence. And the same is true for my will. My will is something that I do. Were He not to give me my existence, give me all my powers, then I wouldn't be able to make decisions either.
So does He allow people to transgress then? Is He like we have free will, but like so in a sense, He's allowing us to step on Him in some sense.
That's 100% right. And here I'll say something, but you could question it. If you do question it, I'll have to push back deeper in another dimension. What a Kodesh Baruch Hu wants is for us to freely choose the good. That's what He wants. But now this is one thing which He wants, which He can't make happen. Because to make it happen denies the definition of what He wants to happen. He wants us to do it freely. If He wants there to be stars, there are stars. If he wants there to be gravity, there's gravity. His wanting it makes it happen. But here, the very thing that he wants can't be made to happen by him. Because if it's made to happen by him, he's not getting what he wants. So here he can express by virtue of command what he, so to speak, prefers to happen. But he can't make it happen, because by making it happen, it contradicts what it is that he wants.
Like he can make it happen, but he's not making it happen.
At that point, we've taken leave of our senses, right?
Because
It's A, but it's not A. You know?
No, because it could obviously make it happen.
He can't make it happen that I freely choose.
No, I mean, like he definitely can, but he's just stopping himself from doing it.
No.
We have some stories in like Tanakh where like somebody would try to do something and he would stop it from happening. So
But-
he would.
But then he didn't make it happen that he chooses. He stops him from choosing.
I guess.
That's different, right?
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I guess.
He picks up the dagger and his hand becomes limp and he can't move his hand.
Yes.
Right? He's not making him choose. He's preventing him from choosing.
Yeah. No, it's right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
You got me there.
It's not a contest.
No. It's,
Yeah, but
you're right.
this is a very important point. So the Rambam says, that our choosing is part of our nature. And he says, just like God created fire to elevate and water to run downhill, so he chose us to be choosers. He created us, gave us the nature to be choosers, right? But if we're going to be free choosers, then he can't also make us do the outcome. Because if he makes us do it, then it's not a free choice. Now the truth is that there's a certain amount of wiggle room here. For example, I want Peter, he's going to get ice cream. I want Peter to buy chocolate. I want him to do that. The place has vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. I want him to buy chocolate. I have two choices. One choice is, and those are his preferences. His preferences are vanilla best, chocolate, and then strawberry, okay? So one thing I can do is, as he gets out of his car, walk up behind him, put a pistol to his head and say, Peter, chocolate. Chocolate, not vanilla, chocolate. And he'll buy chocolate. But I have another option. He's in his car going to the ice cream store. I take a helicopter. I get there first and I buy up all the vanilla. 167 gallons of vanilla. And I take it out of my truck. He walks in, he says to the guy, give me a gallon of vanilla. He says, sorry. Some nut just came in and brought up all the vanilla. But we have chocolate and strawberry. So Peter says, chocolate and strawberry. I wanted vanilla. But I guess if it's chocolate and strawberry, I'll take the chocolate. Did he choose the chocolate freely?
Yeah.
Sure. He had two choices and he chose the one that he wanted. But I got what I wanted also. I got him to choose freely what I wanted to choose by changing the conditions of choice. That you can do. But that's not making him choose freely, that's changing the conditions so that he will choose freely what I want him to choose. There's no guarantee that will happen, but you can manipulate the circumstances to get the outcome you want without taking away his free will. That's not the same as causing him to choose freely. Causing him to choose freely is a contradiction in terms.
So, why did God choose to make, this mammal who had free choice? Why was that important to him?
Okay, to push back to the beginning of why did God create a world at all?
Right. Okay.
So what I'm saying now is like the headlines of different chapters. We said yesterday that God's the key concept we attach to God is perfection. Perfection means maximally good. And as the Ramchal says in the Derech in the Das Tunos, it is the nature of the good to do good. To put it in slightly more philosophical terms, potential goodness can't compare. Let's put that can't compare with actual goodness. So God wouldn't be maximally good if he just possessed the potential to do good without doing good. Now, what do you mean to do good? To do good means to benefit something else. You do good to something else. So the image to have in mind here is Albert Schweitzer on a desert island someplace, all by himself. Yeah, many people think of Albert Schweitzer as a kind of saint, right? But there's nobody else there. And don't tell me, Peter Singer, that he should be kind to the animals. Not interested. And if you're worried about the animals, so they're only trees. And if you come to talk to me about trees, then I'll put them together with rocks. If you're worried about rocks, then I won't listen to you anymore. Yeah, the moon has rights not to be colonized. There's no end to the nonsense that people can talk about. If he's on this island with no one else there, we say he has good character, but he's not doing any good. So God creates the world in order to do good, to realize his capacity for goodness. Now, to do good means there has to be a recipient. And, because God is not going to be satisfied with a halfway job, he has to create a recipient to whom he can give maximum good. That's not trivial because of the next step. This is all in the second chapter of this book that we're studying. Because, let's ask now, what is maximum good? God's going to create a creature and give to that creature maximum good. What is maximum good? He is maximum good. He's perfection. So what God ought to give to the creature is himself. That is to say, he ought to give to the creature his own existence, his own character, his own nature. God should make another God. That would be making a creature that would possess the maximum goodness possible. Only trouble is that that description contains a contradiction. Because if God makes X, then X isn't God. X doesn't have God's character. Because one of God's characteristics is necessary existence. And that can't be for a creature made by something else. So the very fact that this creature is dependent upon God to give it its existence, it can't be God. So, says the Ramchal in the second chapter, God sort of compromises. What he says is, I'm going to give to the creature the maximum goodness of my goodness that a creature can have. But it's got to be consistent with being a creature because I'm making him. Right? Now I have to define what is the maximum godliness that a creature can have. Well, God has all perfections. There are categories of perfection that are relevant to a creature, and a human being can achieve a position where he possesses those perfections. And that would be the maximum good that the creature could possess. But now, these perfections are moral perfections. And just as I said before about free will, you can't create moral perfections in a creature. Because if you create them, then he's just a machine. And they aren't moral at all. They may be beneficial, but they're not moral. I'll give you an analogy. I program my computer with a virtual agent to search the internet for certain information of certain kinds. Every Thursday night, I have 500 email recipients, and they all get an email from me with all the interesting information that my virtual agent has gathered. And one guy in Tucson, Arizona, wakes up Friday morning, and he opens up his emails, he finds the email from me, and he says, look at that. Oh, there's such interesting information. Gottlieb's computer is so generous. Gottlieb's computer is so caring. Gottlieb's computer must love us. Gottlieb's computer sends us this information every Friday morning. I think he's got it a little wrong. I don't think Gottlieb's computer is generous or caring or loving. Maybe Gottlieb is generous. Gottlieb's paying for the computer and the electricity and the software and so forth and so on. The computer is a machine. It does what it's programmed to do. The computer has no moral qualities. An agent with free will can have moral qualities. But an agent without free will, like an animal or a piece of metal, can't have moral qualities. So in order for us to possess the maximum godliness that a creature can possess, we have to have free will. So as with our free will, we can create for ourselves moral characteristics, and in that way have those moral characteristics be similar to God's perfections, and that way be maximally godly. That's the way in which we receive the maximum goodness from God that a creature can receive. That's why you need free will. That's what he says in chapter 2 of.
So I get that. So God creates Adam Harishon, who lights the world, is a perfect kind of creature. I guess more of a spiritual being than anything else. So I understand. But immediately, he goes off the Derech, and now death and suffering come into the world, which have been with us ever since, killing hundreds of millions of people even in the last century. So God, knowing this, if he's a benevolent God, and if he had foreknowledge of this, could one make the argument that man shouldn't have been created at all?
Well, I think it would be hard to make it. First of all, even if there is horrific evil, but there is also good, and that good can be rewarded, and to make the argument, you'd have to estimate the relative value of the good and evil and say that the balance was on the wrong side, or there was too much evil to justify it. I think that would be a hard argument to make. In particular, you have to quantify it. If the reward for goodness is eternal, that means it outstrips any finite size, whereas the evil is finite. So I think it's going to be hard to make the argument. I'm saying that contradicts it, but I think it's going to be very hard to make the argument that the amount of evil that we have means that the project as a whole, including all the good that happens and the reward for that good, isn't worth it. I think this is what's called the quantitative argument from evil. When it's been discussed in the last 30 years to great extent, and it's become very difficult to make an argument like that. More difficult is a person who will say, I see elements of evil in the world that play no role whatsoever in promoting good. So why didn't God just simply create a world without that evil? Not give up the creation altogether, because that leaves you without the good.
That would take away free will.
Well, but now what about, for example, an animal dying in a forest fire where nobody ever hears about it? Presumably that has no effect on free will. That's one of the interesting questions that a philosopher named Rowe thought up about 20 years ago. It's generated a lot of discussion. But the argument that you made is much too brutal. To say that because there's a lot of evil, therefore God shouldn't have created anything at all, and there should have given up all the good that he wanted to do, that's not obviously a good argument. It's very difficult to make that argument. Now, I have said something twice today, and you haven't followed up on it. I'll just mention it. I'm prepared not to do it if you're not interested, but I think especially for the recording, somebody's hearing the recording is saying, hey, but what about? I said, and this we're not considering because it's a contradiction. Right? We said that to say that he made you do what you do freely, that's not a possibility, because since if he made you to do it, it won't be free, and he wants it to be free, so therefore it can't be because it's a contradiction. And somebody in the back is going to wave his hand and say, so what if it's a contradiction? Because the contradiction, God can't do it. I thought God could do anything. I thought God was unlimited in power. Why should it being a contradiction stop it? It's a somewhat longer story. I wrote this up actually on my website. It's called The Problem of Evil, Part 1. But the short story is this. The problem with contradictions is not they're very powerful. There's a lot of rigidity in a contradiction. It's like iron. You can't budge it. Even God can't budge it. It's really tough. It's hard like diamonds, That's not the problem. The problem with contradictions is that contradictions don't make any sense. That when someone suggests, why doesn't God do Q, and Q is a contradiction, he's not talking sense. He might just well say, why doesn't God blah? When you ask him what blah is, he says, I don't know. Why did he do it anyway? He's not asking a question. Blah isn't the word. So, can God make square circles? The correct response to that question, I think, is, what? What? Make what? Square circles? What do you mean? Let me make this vivid. You're on the way to the mall. A friend calls you up. He says, you're on the way to the mall? Yeah. Have you got a spare 10 minutes? Yes. Do you have $25 that you can lend me until you come back? Yes. So I want you to do me a favor. Please pick up for me a square circle. What would you say? Sure. No problem. I think what you would say is, what? I don't get you. A square circle? I don't know what you mean. You know, those words, I hear the words, all right. I know what square is and what circle is. You put it together and no ideas light up inside, you know. The ping pong balls are not bouncing. It's just please tell me in other words. But if you don't tell me in other words, I can't do what you ask because I don't know what you're asking for. So if somebody says, yeah, why can't God cause him to do it freely? Well, so what if it's a contradiction? I say, when you say to me, cause him to do it freely, you're saying to me, square circles. You're not saying anything. Those words mean nothing to me because it's a contradiction. So that's why, and by the way, the Jewish philosophers are all agreed. We do not say of God that he can do things that are contradictory. One of the Rambam's examples is, make a square whose diagonal is equal in length to its side. Yeah, but it's longer. See, it goes further. You can see with your eye, it goes further on. You know, it just pushes further on down the trail. It just doesn't stop where the eye stops. So we don't speak of God as doing that sort of thing because they don't make any sense. So that's why finding a contradiction is really a stopper. It really is a stopper. And one shouldn't confuse it with, like the way I burlesqued it in the beginning. It's not as if, well, let's see, lifting heavy weights is hard, and going against the laws of nature is even harder, and you know, making something out of nothing might also be very, very hard, and laws of logic are even harder. No, they're not in the same ballpark. These are things where there's resistance. I know what you mean. Your words are perfectly meaningful. I know there's resistance. The question is how much power you have to overcome the resistance. When you come to square circle, you're not in the same ballpark. When you say square circle, you're not saying anything. So that's why I use that as a stopper. And the Rambam does so, and the Malbim does so, and the Ramchal does so. Everyone who talks about it says the same thing. When you come to contradictions, we don't say of God that he can do things that are contradictory. Now, I will say, just for the sake of honesty and completeness, the explanation I just gave is not the explanation that they give. I don't understand the explanation they give, so I can't. They talk about that the impossible has an immutable nature. I don't know what those words mean. I've never been able to understand them or explain them. I don't know anybody else who explains them. I explained it in a modern way, so that the point can be substantiated in a way that I think we can defend. But there's more there that I don't understand, that's for sure. But I will use it as a stopper in terms of discussion because, number one, they so use it. And number two, I have an explanation of it. So I think that's good reason to say if what you're asking for is really contradictory, then there's no, I'm not going to follow it out because once you get to a contradiction, that's a stop. So that's the further background. I used that twice and I will use it over and over again without hesitation. Okay.